In the grand halls of the Velan Empire, where gold and crystal touched the sky, humans were nothing more than shadows. They cleaned the marble floors that alien nobles walked upon. They carried trays of glowing food and bowed their heads so low that their eyes never met the gaze of their masters. They were called servants, but everyone knew what that word truly meant: slaves with a polite name. Among them was a quiet man named Eli. He was ordinary in every way: brown hair, tired eyes, and a soft voice that rarely spoke. His clothes were plain gray, his boots old, and his hands always carried the smell of soap and metal polish. He was assigned to serve Princess Sarath Vela, the only daughter of the Emperor. To most humans, being in the royal court was an honor. But Eli knew better. It was just a bigger cage with shinier bars. Every morning, before the twin suns rose above the shining towers, Eli was already awake. He swept the marble corridors, arranged the princess's gowns, and set out her breakfast with quiet precision. He never made mistakes, never complained, never spoke unless spoken to. The guards often teased him for that. "Hey, human." One guard sneered once, tapping Eli's shoulder with the butt of his spear. "Do you even have a voice, or did your masters take that too?" Eli only bowed his head. "I have a voice, sir, I just use it when needed." The guard laughed loudly. "Listen to that. He thinks he's wise. Remember, human, you're nothing but dust in our world." Eli didn't argue. He just smiled faintly, wiped the spill from the floor, and continued his work. He had learned long ago that arguing with prideful men was like throwing stones at the wind. It only came back to hurt you. Princess Sarath, however, had a strange habit. Unlike others of her kind, she never shouted at him. She never called him names or hit him for mistakes. She simply watched him. At first, Eli thought she was suspicious of him, but over time, her gaze softened. Once, during a cold evening, she saw him standing by the window after his duties were done. "Why don't you rest, human?" she asked in her melodic voice. "Your work is finished." Eli turned to her, his face calm. "Because the night guards sleep near your chamber, my lady. I prefer to stay awake in case you need anything." "You're only a servant," she said, curious. Why care so much?" He smiled faintly. "Because care costs nothing, my lady." Her expression changed. She didn't reply, but something inside her shifted that night. From then on, she noticed small things. The way he would test her drink before serving it, making sure it was safe. The way he fixed the heating crystal in her room without being asked. The way he stayed silent when others mocked him, yet still bowed respectfully, even to those who insulted him. To most, Eli was invisible, but to her he was different. The palace, however, was not kind to those who stood out. Rumors began to spread among the nobles. Some whispered that the princess had grown too fond of her human servant. Others said it was shameful to treat a lesser being with kindness, but Sarath ignored them. In a world filled with pride and cruelty, Eli's quiet loyalty was a light she didn't know she needed. Eli, on the other hand, never thought of himself as special. He didn't see kindness as bravery. It was just who he was. To serve was his duty, and to protect his mistress was something deeper, something that didn't need words. He had no title, no power, no armor, only his hands, his heart, and his quiet will. And yet deep down, a storm was forming. The palace would soon welcome a visitor whose very name carried fear across the stars, a hunter so ruthless that even the emperor spoke his name with caution. Eli didn't know it then, but his quiet world of servitude was about to shatter. The stars above the Velan Empire glittered like silent witnesses, watching the fate of one small human begin to turn. The servant who bowed to everyone was soon to stand taller than kings, but for now he only cleaned, bowed, and whispered the same prayer he did every night. Let tomorrow be peaceful. He didn't know that tomorrow would bring the end of peace. The morning began like any other. The twin suns rose above the crystal spires of the Velan Palace, turning the silver walls golden. The servants hurried through the corridors, polishing the floors and preparing for the royal breakfast. But today, something was different. The air itself felt heavier, like a storm waiting to break. Even the guards stood straighter, their faces pale. Rumors had already spread through the palace. A name whispered in fear. Vorn Kale, the hunter of 10 worlds. He was not just a man. He was a shadow that hunted stars. Every story about him began with a scream and ended with silence. He was known for capturing the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, sometimes for money, sometimes for pleasure. Some said he once hunted a living god and won. Now that monster was coming here, to the royal palace. Eli stood in the grand hall helping prepare for the visitor's arrival. His heart was calm on the outside, but deep inside, a strange chill had settled. He could feel it in the air, a faint vibration that made the hairs on his neck rise. He didn't know much about Vorn Kale, but he knew one thing. A man like that didn't visit without reason. When the heavy doors opened, silence fell. The hunter entered like a storm, walking on 2 legs. He was tall, at least a head above the Emperor's tallest guards, and wrapped in armor made from the bones of creatures no one could name. His face was hidden behind a mask of black metal, with 2 red eyes that glowed faintly beneath it. A long scar ran down the side of his helmet, as if even death had tried and failed to claim him. Everyone bowed. Even the Emperor inclined his head slightly. Only one person didn't move fast enough. Eli. He had been carrying a tray of silver goblets and froze when those red eyes turned toward him. The tray shook in his hands, the sound of metal against metal echoing in the silent hall. Vorn Kale's head tilted. A human. His voice was deep, like gravel grinding against steel. You keep these as pets now? A ripple of laughter moved through the alien nobles. Their sharp voices cut through the hall like knives. Eli lowered his head quickly, his face burning. Before he could speak, another voice echoed softly. That human serves me. It was Princess Sarath. She stood at the top of the golden steps, her long silver gown shimmering like moonlight. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Vorn turned his head slightly toward her. Ah. The royal daughter defends her toy. How curious. The Emperor cleared his throat. Hunter Kale, this human is of no importance. Pay him no mind. We have more serious matters to discuss. The hunter gave a low, rumbling laugh and stepped forward, his boots clicking against the floor. But as he passed Eli, he stopped. Slowly, he bent down until his mask was inches from Eli's face. The air around him smelled like ash and metal. I wonder, Vorn said softly, so only Eli could hear. Do you bleed the same color as your masters? Eli didn't answer. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes stayed down. He knew showing fear was useless. Still inside, his heart hammered like thunder. Vorn chuckled and straightened up, walking past him toward the Emperor's throne. The moment he moved away, Eli let out the breath he didn't know he was holding. Princess Sarath's eyes met Eli's from across the room. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he stood a little too still. Without a word, she gave a slight nod, almost invisible. But Eli saw it. It was her silent way of saying, "You did nothing wrong." Later that evening, the palace was quiet again, but the unease lingered. Eli finished cleaning the royal dining room, his mind racing with what had happened. The image of the hunter's red eyes wouldn't leave his thoughts. He knew danger when he saw it. And this man, this monster, was pure danger. When he returned to the princess's chamber, Sarath was standing by the window staring at the stars. She didn't turn when she spoke. He frightens you, doesn't he? Eli paused. He frightens everyone, my lady. She looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. And yet you didn't bow fast enough. He hesitated, then said softly, Fear makes some people fall. It makes others freeze. She smiled faintly. And you? Eli looked down, his voice low but steady. It makes me stand still and watch carefully. Sarath studied him for a moment, then turned back to the window. Good. Then keep watching, Eli. I have a feeling this hunter didn't come here for peace. The night grew darker outside, and far beyond the palace walls, a lone ship hovered in orbit, black, silent, like a waiting predator. Eli didn't know it yet, but that night was the beginning of everything. The beginning of fear, of courage, and of the legend that would make the galaxy remember the name of one simple human. The day after the hunter's arrival, the palace moved as if it were holding its breath. The guards patrolled in tighter formations, their eyes scanning every corridor, every shadow. Servants hurried faster, speaking in whispers about Vorn Kyle, the hunter whose name alone made even the strongest alien warriors tremble. But Eli moved as always, quiet, careful, and attentive. He knew the palace better than most. Every hallway, every hidden passage, every chamber had a story, and he used that knowledge to protect the princess in ways no one would notice. Princess Sarath had noticed. She watched him as he arranged her gowns, polished the crystals, and refilled her water basins with a precision that seemed almost impossible. He moved silently, yet she felt the care in every motion. There was something about him that made her feel safe, even when the hunter's presence lingered like a storm cloud above the palace. "You should rest, Eli," she said one afternoon, her voice gentle but firm. She had been standing by the window watching the suns dip toward the horizon. The warm light painted his face in gold, and for the first time, she saw the exhaustion there, the tight shoulders, the tired eyes, the hands that bore small cuts from hard labor. "I cannot, my lady," Eli replied quietly. "Your guards may sleep. I prefer to stay awake." "Why?" she asked, her brow furrowed. Eli hesitated, then said softly, "Because I must make sure you are safe." Sarath studied him. His words were simple, but the meaning was heavy. Most humans would have hidden, run, or begged for mercy in a palace filled with dangerous creatures and proud nobles. But Eli, this lowly servant, stood like a shield even though he had no sword, no armor, nothing but his own body and will. "You're not like the others," she said finally. Eli simply nodded, bowing his head slightly. Words were unnecessary. The truth of his loyalty shone brighter than any speech could. Meanwhile, the hunter watched. He didn't move openly, nor did he confront them yet. But he was there, always observing. From the shadows of the high balcony, from the corners of the hallway, his glowing red eyes tracked the human and the princess. He found it curious, almost amusing, that a simple creature like Eli moved with such care, such attention, such courage. That night, Eli returned to the princess's chamber with the evening tray. The twin suns had set, leaving the city bathed in silver light and shadow. Sarath was reading an ancient text, her crown dimly glowing, reflecting on the stories of her ancestors. "You move with such quiet strength," she said, not looking up, "even in the presence of monsters." Eli set down the tray and bowed his head. "I only do what is right." Sarath smiled faintly, the kind of smile reserved for those rare moments of honesty between two souls. "And what is right, Eli?" "To protect you," he said without hesitation. She turned toward him, studying his simple human face. "Most would call that foolishness, but you call it duty." The moment was brief yet heavy. The bond between them, unspoken and fragile, grew stronger with each shared glance, each silent gesture. In a palace filled with arrogance and danger, Eli was her quiet anchor, her shield against an uncertain world. That night, Eli patrolled the hallways again. He checked every door, every window, every shadow. The palace felt different now, haunted, as if it sensed the hunter's eyes lingering just beyond walls and corners. Eli paused in the grand hall, listening. The wind whispered against the golden pillars, and somewhere in the distance a door creaked. He moved silently toward it, his senses alert. Vorn Kyle had been here. He had tested them, watching their movements, gauging reactions. Eli knew it, even without seeing the hunter. It was not his first warning, nor would it be his last. Returning to Sarath's chamber, Eli found her standing by the balcony, her gaze on the stars. She didn't speak at first. Finally, she said softly, "Do you ever fear him?" Eli looked out the balcony with her, feeling the cold night wind. "I do not fear for myself, my lady. I fear for you." Her hand brushed lightly against his arm, a small gesture, but it carried more meaning than any crown or title could. "Then we will face him together," she said. Eli bowed his head, feeling a warmth in his chest he had never experienced before. For the first time, he understood that he was no longer just a servant. He was someone who mattered. To her outside, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the palace, the hunter waited, patient, silent, calculating. Eli did not know when the danger would strike, only that it was coming, and that he would be ready, because he was no longer just a human who served. He was a human who could protect, and that simple truth, quiet as it was, would soon shake the galaxy. The palace slept under the glow of twin moons, unaware of the shadow that had already entered its walls. Eli walked quietly through the empty hallways, his ears alert, senses sharp. The silence of the night felt heavier than ever. Every corner, every echo whispered danger. He could feel it deep in his chest, the kind of fear that made the hairs on the back of the neck stand up. Suddenly, a distant scream tore through the corridors, shattering the quiet. Guards ran blindly toward the sound, but one by one their shouts ended in silence. Something or someone moved faster than the eye could follow. Eli's heart pounded. He sprinted toward the princess's chambers, feet barely touching the polished marble. He was not just running, he was moving with purpose, carrying every instinct, every lesson he had learned as a servant, as someone who had spent years observing every corner of the palace. The door to Serath's chamber exploded inward. The force threw him back a step, but he regained balance just in time to see a figure standing in the doorway, Fornkale. The hunter's black armor gleamed under the moonlight, his red eyes burning like twin fires. In one hand he held a blade that shimmered with deadly energy. In the other, the limp body of a palace guard, already a victim of his merciless strength. "Your father refused my offer." Vorn's voice rumbled, low and menacing. "So I take you instead." "A royal trophy." Princess Serath stepped back, her hands trembling as she tried to summon her courage. "You will not touch me," she shouted, her voice echoing in the hall. The hunter laughed, a deep, cruel sound. "And who will stop me? This human?" Eli's chest tightened. He looked at the princess, his duty, his purpose, his reason for being, and he felt something stir deep inside him, something stronger than fear. Without a thought, he charged forward, swinging a broken staff he had picked up from the debris of the destroyed hall. Fornkale turned, his red eyes narrowing. The staff hit his armor with a spark, and the hunter stumbled back slightly, clearly surprised. But only for a moment. He caught the staff with one hand and snapped it in two as if it were a twig. Eli fell back but didn't give up. His chest burned, his ribs ached, and blood ran from a cut above his eye, but he moved again. He ducked low, rolling toward a fallen guard's discarded blade. His mind focused on one thing: protect the princess no matter the cost. Fornkale lunged. His movements were precise, deadly. Each strike could kill. But Eli had something the hunter did not: instinct, unpredictability, and the stubborn courage of a human with nothing left to lose. He dodged, twisted, and struck when he saw an opening. Sparks flew, smoke rose, and the sound of metal against metal filled the hall. "Human," Orn growled, clearly amused and frustrated. "You dare attack me?" Eli gritted his teeth. "I do more than dare. I protect," Princess Serath screamed as the hunter's blade came dangerously close to her, but Eli threw himself between them. The energy blade grazed his shoulder, burning through his tunic, leaving a searing pain that would mark him forever. He fell to his knees but gripped the princess's hand tightly, pulling her behind him. "You cannot win," Vorn said, his voice a low rumble of menace. "I will take her and you will die watching." Eli's jaw tightened. He saw the flicker of fear in Serath's eyes, and it fueled something deep inside him. Rising despite the pain, he grabbed a small plasma detonator from a fallen guard, holding it with trembling hands. "Not today," he whispered. Vorn lunged again, swinging his blade with terrifying speed. Eli dodged, his body screaming in protest. Then, in one desperate motion, he pressed the detonator to the hunter's armor. The device sparked, glowing brightly, and then exploded with a deafening roar. Smoke filled the hall. The blast threw Eli backward, and he hit the marble with a force that knocked the wind out of him. Coughing and bleeding, he struggled to rise, his vision blurred, but his eyes found the princess's. She was alive, safe. Somewhere under the smoke and debris, the hunter roared. Eli knew the fight was far from over. But for the first time, something had changed. The lowly servant, weak, small, and underestimated, had made the galaxy's deadliest hunter hesitate. And in that moment, Eli understood the truth he had always felt but never spoken. To protect her, he would risk everything. Smoke filled the grand hall. curling around the broken pillars and shattered crystal chandeliers. The stench of scorched metal and burning debris hung heavy in the air. Eli coughed, wiping blood from his split lip, but he refused to stay down. The hunter had retreated for a moment, his black armor smoking where the plasma detonator had hit. But Eli knew it was only temporary. Vornkale was patient, calculating, and cruel. He would return with a fury that could crush the palace in a heartbeat. Princess Sareth clung to the wall, her silver blue eyes wide with fear and awe. She had never seen someone fight like Eli. Not a guard, not a soldier. Not anyone in the palace had dared to challenge Vornkale. And yet here was a human, small, fragile, and underestimated, standing against the galaxy's deadliest predator. Eli rose to his feet, wincing as pain stabbed through his shoulder. He felt the heat of the explosion still burning in his chest, but adrenaline and determination pushed him forward. He knew the hunter would come again, and this time he had to be ready. Vornkale emerged from the smoke, his glowing red eyes scanning the hall. The sound of his boots against marble echoed like thunder. "You are persistent, human," he said, voice low and menacing. "But persistence will not save you." Eli's grip tightened around a shard of broken crystal, a jagged, sharp piece of metal from the shattered chandelier. It wasn't a weapon, not really, but it was all he had. "I don't need to save myself," he said through gritted teeth. "I only need to protect her." The hunter lunged, swinging his massive energy blade with terrifying precision. Eli ducked, rolling to the side, and slashed upward with the crystal shard. Sparks flew as the jagged edge scraped against the hunter's armor. Vorn roared, stumbling back just enough for Eli to push Princess Sareth behind a fallen pillar. "You dare strike me again?" Vorn growled, his voice vibrating through the hall. His hand clenched and a hum of energy filled the air, the sound sharp and threatening. Eli could feel the weight of the hunter's power pressing down, but he didn't falter. He scanned the hall quickly, looking for anything he could use. His eyes fell on the shattered floor panels, broken pieces of furniture, and scattered control panels for the palace lighting. A plan formed. He grabbed a loose panel and held it up like a shield. The hunter lunged again, faster than Eli could track, and the shard of crystal shattered completely against Vorn's armor. The human stumbled backward, but he had bought himself a moment. With a swift movement, he kicked a control panel toward the hunter. Sparks and wires flew, and for a split second Vorn's vision was obscured. Eli didn't hesitate. He dashed forward, tackling the hunter with everything he had, using his weight and momentum to knock him off balance. Vorn staggered but recovered instantly, swinging his blade in a wide arc. Eli rolled to the side, feeling the energy pass inches from his face. Princess Sareth watched, breathless. She realized in that terrifying moment that Eli was no longer just a servant. He had become a force, a human whose courage, quick thinking, and loyalty made him more dangerous than any weapon. The hunter recovered and lunged again, but Eli was ready. He used the broken debris, the shards, and even the hall's columns to slow Vorn's movements. Every dodge, every counterattack, every small strike was precise. The human's body ached. Blood dripped from cuts and burns, yet he didn't stop. Each movement carried one thought: protect her. Vorn paused, breathing heavily, his red eyes glowing brighter. "You are unlike any human I have faced," he admitted almost grudgingly. "Clever, fast, resilient, but it will not be enough." Eli looked at him squarely. "I don't fight to win. I fight to protect." That statement, simple and pure, seemed to echo in the hall. Something shifted. The hunter's movement slowed, just slightly, as if he were weighing every strike against the stubborn defiance of a small human. Eli knew this moment could not last forever. The hunter's strength was immense, and soon the fight would reach its climax. But for now, Eli had done the impossible. He had faced the galaxy's deadliest hunter, had kept Princess Sareth safe, and had shown that courage was not measured in size, armor, or weapons. It was measured in heart, and Eli's heart burned brighter than any star in the galaxy. And as the smoke swirled around them, the human stood tall, wounded and battered, yet unbroken. The first part of the battle had been won, not through brute strength, but through courage, cleverness, and unwavering loyalty. Princess Sareth took a step forward, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "Eli, my hero." He didn't answer. He only readied himself. The hunter would return again, and when he did, Eli would be waiting. The grand hall of the Valen Palace was a battlefield now. Smoke curled like living shadows, marble pillars were cracked and splintered, and broken chandeliers hung dangerously above. Eli's body ached with every movement. His shoulder burned where the hunter's blade had grazed him. His hands were raw from gripping shards and panels, and every breath felt like fire in his chest. Yet he refused to kneel, refused to surrender. Princess Serath watched from behind the shattered remains of a golden pillar. Fear trembled in her silver-blue eyes, but so did admiration. She had never believed one human could stand against a creature like Vorn Kale, the hunter of 10 worlds. And yet here he was, bloodied, battered, but unbroken. The hunter rose from the smoke, his armor scorched, but his red eyes burned brighter than ever. "You tire quickly, human," he said, voice low and dangerous, echoing across the hall. "Soon you will fall and she will be mine." Eli's chest heaved, but he did not flinch. He studied the hall quickly. Every crack in the floor, every fallen shard of crystal, every loose fixture. He had a plan, but it would take every ounce of strength he had left. "Not today," he whispered to himself. Vorn lunged forward, blades swinging in a deadly arc. Eli ducked, rolled, and grabbed a fallen energy conduit from the wall. Sparks ran along its edges, crackling with lethal potential. He threw it to the ground and it sparked an explosion, sending a burst of fire toward the hunter. Vorn staggered back, his mask glowing with heat, and for the first time, Eli saw hesitation in the hunter's red eyes. He didn't pause for long, but it was enough. Eli darted forward, low and fast, grabbing Princess Serath's hand and pulling her toward a narrow side corridor. "Stay close," he shouted, voice strained but commanding. Serath hesitated, fear fighting against trust, but then she saw his eyes, steady, determined, and full of courage. She let him pull her along, realizing that this human, this servant she had known for so long, was more than just loyalty. He was bravery incarnate. Vorn recovered, his armor singed and smoking, and advanced with terrifying speed. "You cannot hide from me?" he roared. Eli skidded around a fallen pillar, his shoulder throbbing with pain. He needed to find a way, not just to survive, but to turn the tide. His eyes landed on the control panel for the palace's automated defenses. It was damaged, wires hanging loose, but with enough ingenuity it could work. With trembling hands, he ripped open the panel and reconnected the circuits, redirecting the power to the floor tiles in the corridor. Sparks flew, wires hissed, and the tiles glowed faintly under the hunter's boots. Eli's heart pounded, not from fear but from the knowledge that he had a chance to strike. Vorn stepped into the corridor, unaware of the trap beneath him. His eyes flicked up just as the floor tiles activated, sending a pulse of energy through the ground. The hunter roared in surprise and pain, stumbling back as electricity danced along his armor. Eli seized the moment. He charged, his movements fueled by adrenaline and the desperate need to protect. He slashed at the hunter's exposed joints with the shards of crystal he carried, each strike precise and calculated. Sparks flew, smoke filled the corridor, and the sound of metal clashing against metal echoed like thunder. Princess Serath followed close behind, her hand brushing against his shoulder as he led her forward. "Eli, you're incredible," she gasped. He didn't answer, only focused. "Keep moving," he said, pain cutting through every word. The hunter roared again, swinging his massive blade with fury, but Eli had learned to anticipate him. Every dodge, every counter, every step was a calculated gamble. The human had no armor, no strength of a giant, but he had cunning, courage, and heart, and that was enough to turn the tide, at least for now. Finally, Eli led the hunter into a larger hall, where debris from the previous blasts hung precariously. With one final move, he activated a fallen energy core, sending a controlled explosion through the room. The blast threw Vorn backward, staggering, burning, and for the first time, Eli saw fear, or at least uncertainty, in the hunter's glowing red eyes. Eli collapsed to his knees, exhaustion and pain overwhelming him, but his eyes found the princess. She was safe, alive. And in that moment, he realized something profound. This was not about being a servant anymore. This was about courage, loyalty, and love. The kind that makes even the weakest human a hero. Serath rushed to him, tears streaking her face. "Eli, you're incredible." "You saved me." He smiled faintly, barely able to speak. I only did my duty." But he knew deep in his heart that this duty had changed everything. The hunter was still alive, still dangerous, but for the first time, Eli had gained the upper hand. And in that fragile moment, he understood that he was no longer just a human in the palace. He was her protector, her champion, and perhaps her equal in courage. The red glow of the hunter's eyes faded slightly in the distance as though he understood that defeating this human would not be easy. And Eli, bleeding and battered, knew that the final confrontation was coming. But he was ready, because he had heart. And in the galaxy, that was a weapon no one could underestimate. The grand hall was almost unrecognizable. Marble floors were cracked, pillars were splintered, and smoke curled in thick, ghostly spirals. The air smelled of burned metal and scorched stone. Eli's body ached from every cut, every burn, every movement. His shoulder throbbed with pain. His ribs protested each breath, and blood trickled down his temple. Yet he did not stop. Vorn Kale, the hunter of 10 worlds, rose from the wreckage, his armor scorched but his eyes burning like crimson suns. His red gaze fixed on Eli with a mixture of fury and curiosity. "Persistent," he growled. "Impressive. But you cannot defeat me. You are only human." Eli's jaw tightened. "I am more than human," he said, voice low but firm. "I protect those I care for." The hunter laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Care? It will not save you." Vorn lunged, swinging his massive energy blade with lethal speed. Eli barely dodged, rolling to the side, feeling the heat of the strike graze his arm. Sparks flew, illuminating the hall in brief flashes of red and gold. Princess Sereth clung to the wall, terrified yet unable to look away. She had never seen bravery like this. Not in guards, not in soldiers, only in the quiet human who had once been her servant. Eli scrambled to his feet, eyes scanning the hall. Every second counted. He saw the remnants of shattered chandeliers, fallen crystal shards, and exposed energy conduits. He realized that this battle could not be won by strength alone. He had to outthink the hunter. Grabbing a jagged shard of crystal, he held it tightly in one hand. With the other, he activated a damaged energy panel on the floor, sending a pulse of electricity toward Vorn Kale. The hunter staggered, momentarily blinded by sparks, and for the first time, Eli saw hesitation flicker in those crimson eyes. He didn't waste the chance. Sprinting forward, he dodged another swing, rolling under the hunter's blade, and struck at the joints of his armor with the crystal shard. Sparks erupted as metal groaned under the pressure. Vorn roared, staggering back, unaccustomed to resistance. Princess Sereth's heart pounded. She realized then that Eli was not only brave, he was clever. Every movement, every strike, every risk he took was designed to protect her, to weaken the hunter without dying in the process. She wanted to help, but she knew her strength could not match his. Instead, she prayed silently, hoping he would survive. Eli could feel the end approaching. The hunter was strong, relentless, and wounded only slightly. One more strike from Vorn Kale could end him. But he refused to yield. Not now, not ever. He glanced at the princess, saw her silver blue eyes filled with fear and trust, and knew he had one chance. Using the broken floor tiles, shards, and exposed wires, he improvised one final trap. He led the hunter toward the center of the hall, where the remaining energy conduits formed a circuit. With one final push, he activated the system. Sparks flew, energy surged, and the floor beneath the hunter exploded in a controlled pulse of electricity. Vorn Kale roared in pain and fury, stumbling backward as the electric current raced through his armor. For the first time, the hunter faltered, weakened and off balance. Eli seized the moment, rolling forward and striking with all his remaining strength. The crystal shard cut deep into the joint of Vorn's armor, finally piercing through. The hunter fell, crashing against the pillars, and for the first time in his life, he was defeated, not by power but by heart, cunning, and the courage of a human who refused to bow. Eli collapsed to the floor, his body trembling from exhaustion. His vision blurred, and he could barely lift his arms. Yet when he looked up, he saw Princess Sereth rushing toward him, tears streaming down her face. She fell beside him, holding his hands. You saved me," she whispered, voice breaking. "You were just a servant, and yet you are my hero." Eli managed a faint smile, pain radiating through every movement. "I only did my duty," he said softly. Sereth shook her head, pressing his hand to her chest. "No, Eli, this is more than duty. This is courage, loyalty, and heart. You are not a servant anymore. You are my protector, my champion, my equal." The twin moons shone through the shattered ceiling, casting silver light over the hall. Word of the battle had spread already, and the palace guards peeked from behind broken pillars, eyes wide with awe. Even the Emperor's advisors whispered among themselves, realizing what had just occurred. A human, once thought weak and insignificant, had faced the deadliest hunter in the galaxy and survived. Vornkale had fled, nursing his wounds, but his reputation would forever carry the story of that night. And Eli? He lay there, battered, broken, but unbowed. For the first time, he did not feel small or insignificant. He had been a servant, yes, but now he was a legend. Princess Sarath helped him to his feet, supporting him with a strength and tenderness that spoke louder than any crown or title. "From this day forward," she said, her voice strong and certain, "you are no longer my servant. You are my protector. You are my hero, and the galaxy will remember your name." Eli looked at her, eyes filled with pain, pride, and something he had never known before. Acceptance. He had fought not for glory, not for recognition, but for her. And in doing so, he had shown the universe what humans were capable of: courage, cleverness, and a heart that could defy even the darkest shadows. And so, in the glowing ruins of the Valen Palace, the galaxy witnessed a truth that would never be forgotten. A lowly human servant, small and unarmed, had faced the deadliest hunter in existence and had won. He was no longer just Eli. He was a hero, and legends once born never die.